Hey, welcome back to the Breaking Bread Village. And today I have a guest with me. And I'm going to have you introduce yourself and then we'll get started with the conversation.
Perfect. Sounds good. My name's Matt Larson. I'm in my mid 30s, and we're here with Aaron today to talk about my journey of healing and growth into myself as a person and as an adult.
Awesome, awesome. So, Matt, first of all, I want to tell you thank you for being here today. And, you know, it's really interesting. We talk about healing and our journey. For me, it never ends, right? You're constantly
It shouldn't end until we're in the grave, yes.
exactly. You're constantly learning yourself and unlearning things, relearning things. It's just a lot to it, right?
It is.
A lot of complexity. So I want you to kind of start off with your childhood,
Yeah.
because I think for all of us, that's right. That's our foundation of kind of how I call it, the origin story, like how we became who we are. So
It's
yeah,
true, though, and we all have one. And so that's something that I've been journeying through myself is I've really felt like I've had many great aspects about childhood, but some challenges. And
sure,
frankly, that's really going to be the case of every human. And so it's okay as long as we can look at that childhood now as a foundation. And if we look at, like, I'm kind of nerdy, look at buildings and look at all of these other things,
yeah,
foundation supports, but doesn't necessarily control what happens now, right? What's built
right,
above it can change. So for me, I kind of grew up in a unique situation. Both my parents are nerds. Went to Michigan Tech, got chemistry degrees, and my mom homeschooled us all the way through. Bless her heart, five of us,
oh
all
wow,
the way through from kindergarten through college.
yeah, wow,
So we kind of stayed at home. We were in a very tight knit religious community as well. So
sure,
we didn't get out and about with a lot of other people, which has its ups and downs.
sure,
But
yeah,
I ended up hitting college at 15 and having not really had anyone other than a parent to interact with for grading and all of that. There was a lot of challenges getting into school and a lot of social anxieties. People who
mm,
meet me now have usually absolutely 0% clue that my biggest struggle in healing has been recognizing that I've dealt with anxiety, especially coming from social situations.
sure,
Um, and I think that was probably the one detriment of the style of childhood that I grew up from.
yeah,
But at the very same time, that's given me the energy to do what I do now.
yeah, yeah,
So, like, you can switch because now I'm in the public field every single day.
yeah,
And what I learned through those challenges with some health problems, both for myself and for some other relatives,
sure,
has given me the power to now use those things for good instead
hmm,
of letting them affect me only for negative and control my current self.
yeah.
I don't know if that's making any sense.
No, it's making perfect sense. I really liked how when you opened up when you talked about um the buildings, right? And how they're built on a foundation. I think about when they tear down buildings, right? And everything gets wiped out, but that foundation is typically still there, right? And then they may rebuild another building or put a parking lot over it or whatever. But I just find that very interesting because you can be built up again, right? You can
Yes.
reinvent yourself. I am the queen of reinventing myself, because I really call it just, on the journeying, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
when you are walking, it's like, oh, I want to do this. This really speaks to me. And then 20 years later, something else may speak to you, and that is okay. And I think that in our society, we frowned upon that, and kind of make people feel like that's not all right to change direction.
Yep. Well, in society in general, but especially from a lot of male lenses in this area,
Sure.
success is money and status driven.
Hmm.
And I have learned through going through 9 years of my previous profession that money doesn't satisfy.
Yeah.
I hit the absolute peak, made great money, and was vomiting almost every day.
Mm,
Like it,
mm.
and that was me. That wasn't the fault of anyone or anyone else.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, I've really come to a realization of, like, current self. I realized that I wasn't being honest with my own emotions to myself about what
Yeah.
I wanted. I realized I was going through life every day about either what did somebody else want or what could I do to avoid hurting someone else? It was
Yeah.
never about me
Yeah.
directly.
Yeah.
Of course,
Yeah.
there's plenty of things we excuse, but I
Sure.
found that I wasn't actually being intimate with myself.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Not just
let's.
sexually, but like emotionally.
Oh
And if you're
yeah.
not intimate with yourself, you can't be intimate. So intermittent. Wow.
No, that's okay. Well, today is Good Friday, so some
Right,
people
right.
are maybe fasting or something. I don't know. So it works.
But you can't be with your partners or anyone else if you
Yeah.
aren't to yourself.
Yeah. Let's talk about the college, right? Because
Sure.
I think about, I know plenty of people who homeschool, and I know, a lot
Yep.
of communities, and I think it's great. And of course, everything has pros and cons, right?
Everything.
And every child responds to things differently.
Mhm.
So nothing is just this general, concept or
Yes.
way of being. With that said, coming from an environment that was a little bit more, closed off,
Yep.
so to speak, right? Um, how did you migrate and like change into this college experience? I mean, because I'm thinking, I'm just imagining, you come into a space with all these people from all these different demographics, and people with different beliefs too, right? I mean, because typically, and I may be making an assumption, but I'm assuming that you were around a lot of people that shared the same faith in you growing up.
Mhm.
And so how did you make that switch? How did you
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think the easiest way to start that explanation is in the environment I grew up, the lens of asking why and running through the details to its very insane minutia was
Mm,
normal.
mm.
Every single day, we could ask why about anything, and the rest of life would pause while we dug down to the minutia of why something worked. So
Okay.
when I went out into the public and hit college at 15, I wanted to know the why behind everything.
Mm,
For the
mhm.
most part, I already had read the textbook. And so, day one of class one, when everyone else wanted the professor to just read the syllabus and say goodbye, I was already asking questions on chapter two or three.
Oh wow, yeah.
And so, I ended up really pissing off and irritating the like students around me.
Yeah.
Um, and so, I learned to temper that.
Mm.
But in that process of tempering me, I tempered myself completely and shut myself down to only pay attention to survive in society because I didn't know how to deal with those social pressures. I just learned to be a chameleon.
Mm.
I never lied about anything. I just never was actually myself.
Mm.
So I would shut down my nerdery
Yeah.
rather than just learning how to explain it differently to people. So working on understanding that other people's lenses were perhaps equally valid
Mhm.
was, I think, one of the hardest things. Because being
Wow.
a super nerd, I've always looked previously growing up that there was a right or wrong answer for everything.
Okay.
A right or wrong. And I'm not saying that my parents or anyone else gave me that
Yeah.
lens, just looking backwards, the lens I carried was there was always an absolute truth and always an absolute right or wrong. And if I didn't understand it, it was wrong.
Okay.
For a funny story that I'll explain this, I couldn't understand how Walgreens and CVS existed.
Tell me.
Conceptually, they made no sense to me.
Tell me how. Yeah.
So we grew up out in the country. It was about a 20-minute drive to town. So
Okay.
once a week, we went to Meijer and we would get 2 grocery carts full of food.
Mhm.
We had it on a list. We bought only what was on the list and blah, blah, blah. So I never understood why people would ever go to a quick convenience store and spend more money because you wouldn't go to Walgreens and get 2 cartfuls of food. That was the only lens I knew.
Mm.
And so I didn't understand. Like now I've got 2 little kids and I work right across from a grocery store. So I
Yeah.
go into Kroger or Walgreens probably 4 or 5 times a week. Oh, heck, give me a gallon of milk, whatever. Um, so my lens has changed. Now I can look at it and say, there's many ways that can work.
Yeah.
Let's work with all the people and help them fix things that they want to fix, not everything and all at once. Because I tried to fix everyone and everything and optimize everything, and that doesn't work. You
Yeah.
cannot optimize everyone.
Yeah. 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 That's interesting. And I think many people share that, right? Where we look at these absolutes, we look at these generalizations, and we do it from, based on where we come from, right?
Mhm.
Our environments and what people teach us. And I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, when you grow up in a religious home, I did too. Um, you do learn that there are some rights and wrongs, and that's the end of it, right?
Yeah.
So, and I too was a child that asked why all the time. Now, I was not as much encouraged to ask why, um, because I wanted to I questioned everything. I've always been, and not even in a, people, when you say questioned, it's almost seen as a negative. And it's really, I really just was curious about so much, like, well, how,
Your faith cannot become your own unless you question it.
Mm.
And I think that's something that I can't speak to other religions, but
Sure.
for Christians in general, they don't make the faith their own. It's the parents' faith. And it never becomes a point because you aren't supposed to ask questions, or you don't, or the parents don't have the resources to answer about how does the religion talk about anything.
Yeah.
Sexuality, humanity, beginning and end, all of these concepts that as humans, period, we
Yeah.
want to know about. Each religion has a explanation. And if that next generation isn't comfortable to ask those hard questions, it will not become their own faith.
Sure.
And I think we've seen that in society in
Yeah.
general. Like you
Yeah.
said, right? You asked a lot of questions, but you didn't really get a lot of answers.
No.
Then it's hard for that to become your own faith because you have all of these question marks about important things.
Yeah. 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 So, so tell me, that transition, right,
Mm-hmm.
from college to adulthood, because I mean, you went to college at 15 years old. So, finding self identity, what did that look like for you? What did it look like for you?
It didn't.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, it did it. It did. Self identity was a real struggle because, like, I have worked outside the home since I was 9 or 10. Just farms, doing things like that for spending money. And so then when I went to college, um, I found fashion and started enjoying it.
Yeah.
And to almost a T, everyone was assigning me a sexuality that was not my own based upon that, even at school. And then when I came back to small town Midland,
Yeah.
Early mid 2000s, wearing tight, skinny clothing. Mid 2000s were tight, but
Yeah.
they were compared to what I was used to.
Yeah.
Wearing express dress clothes and stuff.
And now that's really in.
And now it's all in and it's
Yes.
normal. But at the time, like, I was wearing crazy socks in this area and all of that.
Yeah.
It was really hard because the sexuality they assigned me doesn't pair with my religious beliefs. And, until the day I got married to my wife, even my best friend's wife thought I leaned the other way.
Oh,
and
wow.
So that was just interesting, and it's kind of remained interesting to me because now I can look through it from a different lens and go, okay, for me, I'm straight. I've never felt any other feelings. Cool.
Yeah.
And that's my religious beliefs as well. But if someone doesn't believe my religious beliefs, then I don't need to hate on them or think about them any differently than I would somebody who has a different religious belief than mine. So I've been able to come through that, but it was really difficult to create an identity when society told me.
Well, they gave you one.
They gave me one, and in that giving one, I felt rejection. Extreme rejection.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Because more or less, if I felt at the time that if my clothing preferences made everyone else around me believe me that I had to be gay.
Right.
That I had to not know myself. And that if everyone around me knew that I liked men, it didn't matter if I did or didn't, I must have to like it, and I must be broken for not liking.
Wow. Wow.
So,
what a heavy load.
Yeah, it was. And again, that's, now looking back, that was my choice to pick that load up. But at the time, I couldn't. That was just what I felt. I didn't have control over it at the time.
Yeah, I mean, because come on. I mean, you were young and still trying to find yourself, right?
Yep.
And people, we need to really, just be honest. Not that you are. I'm just saying in general, like, with our upbringing does impact us in such great ways where we question ourselves about things if we want to go a different direction. And that's not even about sexuality. I mean, that's just anything, right? Anything. If you want to be, say, an entrepreneur and not go into the family business, I mean, it's just so many different things, right? Where our upbringing can impact that. So tell me, how did you find your way out of that, so to speak? I mean, because if wearing clothes, quote unquote, made you gay,
Mhm.
right? Did you stop wearing the clothes to try to appease people? How did that feel when people close to you, like you said, your best friend or
Mhm.
close friends or family members told you, well, you must be gay? Like, how did you feel?
Yeah.
I mean, how did you
At the
navigate through
time,
that?
yeah, at the
Sorry, I'm
time,
just like,
you're
oh.
fine. I love this. I
Yeah.
love digging into it because I think there's way more people that have dealt with the feelings of isolation like this
Yeah.
in different scenarios. Maybe
Sure.
not just growing up or college, but um, I got really isolated then because it was the first time had lived away from home.
Mm.
So here I am going into a new town for the first time, living on my own, first time having to do groceries and do life and plan all of life on my own,
Wow.
having all of that autonomy. I went from 0 to 100,
Yeah.
right? Which may seem silly, but even figuring out what to eat for breakfast was hard because it had always been around, and now I had to figure out to go to the store to get it. It
No,
seems
it
silly,
no, it doesn't. It
but
doesn't
then
actually. Yeah.
that dichotomy of the clothing specifically was hard because I was reaching out for connection and love and the removal of those isolation fears to community groups that should have believed similarly to
Mm.
like Christian groups on campus, things like that.
Sure.
And I had a really hard time plugging into them because they also all were assigning that, or many, assigning those sexualities to me based upon my clothing and basically self removing me from their groups or not really including me a lot based on that.
And
There
and
might have been
and
other reasons, but that's how I took it.
oh, of course, of course. I mean, it just probably being different, right? It probably was a little awkwardness, right? I mean, this.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, I just picture this kid, right? That's been kind of sheltered, so to speak, And then, I mean, we do as a society, we throw you out there to say, hey, make it happen.
And I was
Hope.
18, 19 coming in as a super junior.
Oh wow,
So I'm in
wow.
classes of 101 and 300 levels. So I didn't fit in with any of my own students
Oh wow.
there to start with either, um, because more or less I was both a junior and a freshman at the same time.
Oh wow. Wow.
Because I
Okay.
transferred in from a community college. So I came in with an associate's degree going in to get my bachelor's. So
So
then I'm
people
dealing.
probably envied that a little bit
Oh, yeah.
too. Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So you
yes.
were like this really smart kid that was younger than them, that knew a lot, that asked questions when they were ready to
It
for
was super socially awkward. Uh huh.
yeah, 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 and wanted to dress like you wanted to dress, right?
Mm-hmm.
So tell me, I mean, once that college experience ended, and it seemed like it had its struggles quite a bit.
Quite.
Um, how did you, going into adulthood after college? So tell me about that, how that worked.
I had to be broken first.
Okay.
Like, that didn't actually break me all the way. Um,
So what did?
working my first job out of college,
Yeah.
I worked 13 out of every 14 days.
Mm.
So there was a time that I ended up working 26, 27 days straight.
Oh wow.
The beginning of a 14-day cycle I had off, and then the end of the next one. Um, and I finally realized that I wasn't living. I was eating all the crap food, not treating my body well. I was really off of my game.
Yeah.
And I remember calling my parents saying, like, hey, if you allowed me to come move home, I could pick up a job at a fast food joint and net more money than I'm doing living on my own right now. Um, can I do that? And that was the last thing I wanted to do after, reaching a taste of independence was to move back home.
Sure.
They, welcomed me back with open arms, and I came back into town and tried a new career, one that would allow me to continue to wear the fun dress clothes that I wanted to wear and
Yeah.
put them to my use, not my disadvantage. And it worked. It was really difficult. I think the saving grace of it all is my wife Emily, because she met me when I was still really awkward and completely unself confident about any ounce of me.
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
like 0% self confidence in most areas, and she's really she's been there for me.
Yeah. I mean, Emily is a great human.
I've never
Um,
met one like her.
yeah, no, she's definitely unique. She's definitely unique, and I appreciate that in her. Um, how was that on your marriage, right? I mean, because for all of us who are
Mm-hmm.
in a relationship, married, um, dating, whatever it is, you know, it can be difficult because I mean, when you think about it, especially then you add children into it, it's like you're trying to be this parent, you're trying to be this spouse, and you're also trying to be a person, right? Individual. And we're still learning ourselves. I mean, I talk to people who are in their 60s, 70s, who are just now realizing things about themselves, you know? So how does that impact that, you know, the relationship?
When we first got married, we did 6 months of premarital counseling through our church. They offered that free of charge, just
Oh,
a service to couples in the church to get like foundation questions kind of
yeah,
answered of how to have a good marriage,
yeah.
and a person to talk to when you had struggles. And it worked really well, but then, our first like 6 months of marriage was really rough. And I blamed it all on one thing or another about Emily. And then we decided that we wanted to build a good foundation, so we would pay for counseling, which was really hard to do because I'd never spoken to a counselor of any kind before. We didn't have school counselors. That was mom, right?
Right, right, right.
So
Yeah.
I was completely unfamiliar with the topic of mental health and being able to talk to people.
And just if I can interject real quick,
Of course.
was this counselor that you went to go see, was it a Christian counselor or just a counselor, so to
It was a
speak?
counselor here in town who happened to also be a Christian counselor, or a counselor who was a Christian. I felt more comfortable going to someone who would give me advice that would follow along with my religious beliefs, because at
Yeah.
the time I couldn't, or wasn't really separating out what I wanted to believe. So if
Mm.
someone told me something, I would either accept all or nothing of what they were telling me. And now I can accept the pieces that I want to.
Yeah,
So it's a
yeah,
different scenario. But
yeah.
I
I just
went,
was
yeah,
curious. Yeah,
I
yeah.
went in basically expecting that the counselors would release me after a session or two and work with Emily. And it was the
Right.
opposite.
Go talk to, right, go
Right. I was
talk to
like,
her.
I'll talk to her. She's in the room. And
I think we all have done that. Yeah.
yep, yep.
Yeah.
And I was very much going into it with the um, counselor tell me what to do, tell me what's wrong with her, maybe me. If it's not wrong with me. I can just make a little modification and maybe treat
Right.
her a little
Or how
differently.
can I, yeah, better treat her to help her out
Oh,
with
that
what
was,
she's going.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I knew that was probably going to be the case. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that it was going to basically be all me. I wasn't being emotionally vulnerable. I had no self, so I wasn't being
Mm.
emotionally vulnerable to myself. And then for sure was not being emotionally vulnerable to the one person who needs it and respects it the most.
Sure. Yeah.
And if there's no emotional connection in a marriage, like, yeah, you theoretically aren't going to hurt yourself, but you also aren't going to grow or gain at all.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it was really rough. And it wasn't until, um, years have gone by, and she's proven to be an amazing woman who,
Mm-hmm.
anytime we get in any type of a hurtful words or a situation, once it calms down, she always comes back and apologizes about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized then, like in almost 6 years of marriage, there's never been a hard topic that we haven't been able to talk about.
Oh, awesome.
It
Yeah.
might hurt to do it, but we've always come to a together resolution to it. So I decided that I would go back to counseling, um, and try to start having, conversations about whatever it is, just with myself, and try to
Sure.
work on myself. And now that I've been doing counseling almost a year, been on mental health meds, I'm a completely new person, like a new version of picking out all the best pieces that I can from my past,
Yeah.
using all of that rubble of my life
Yeah.
to rebuild that foundation pieces of in forgiving people,
Yeah.
letting go of the negative conversations that have happened in my life that race through my head, letting go of those negative thoughts, and actually accepting compliments, giving them, and then being emotionally vulnerable with my
Why did you
spouse.
have a hard time accepting? And I want to preface this question with this because you and I have talked personally, right? And shared, and I truly appreciate your vulnerability in that space and also right now. And I say it to say that I know that you are not saying, you know, a lot of specifics, which is okay. Okay. So I want to preface it with that. It's a lot of specifics that I know that you aren't saying, and it's okay because I think that it's still touching on what has taken place and what is going on in your life. So I say that to ask that vulnerable space, right? And how you started saying, you know, I'm going to accept myself. I'm going to forgive people. What did that forgiveness look like? How did that look? Because it sounds like it's been like a lot of hurt,
Hmm.
right? That you either received from someone else or you blamed yourself for receiving it from them, right? That you
Hmm.
must have been the guilty party. So how does that forgiveness look like for
Yeah.
you? Yeah.
So the reason I didn't give some of the super specifics is there's a
Sure.
lot of different medical challenges that had happened in the family, and some people are really private about medical
Sure.
choices. But um, the long and the short of all of that is that I learned the social anxiety and social skills based upon keeping some people in my life, negotiating with them and working with it and kind of keeping them stable emotionally.
Sure.
And to do that, I had to remove myself and shut down myself because I couldn't handle that as a kid with no outlet to talk to.
Yeah.
And so I shut myself down and helped them from a very young age. And I wasn't until I got to counseling and that was kind of pointed out to me that I was able to pick myself back up again.
Yeah.
And then the forgiveness for me has been able to look back and say, that person or persons or events are in the past, and the only way that they are still controlling me now is if I let them. If
Right.
I am still picking that rock of offense or whatever terminology you want to use, right? That pain, I am the one that's forwarding the historical pain to future now.
Yeah. Yeah.
That person isn't reminding me of the situation, right? Like that it's done and gone. They may
Right.
not even remember it. I'm the one that's causing
No, that
my own
is
worst enemy, my own pain.
no, but that is so true. It's very interesting how things. I mean, even when I talk to my children, right, as adults, and I say things, and they'll bring up something and say, "Oh, do you remember when this happened?" I'm like, "No, I don't even know what you're talking about," you know. And
Yep.
but they remember it. They remember very vividly and specifically, and I find that so interesting because it didn't impact me the way it impacted them,
And
right?
it's okay.
Exactly. And I was going through my own survival, you know, survivalist, things. And it's just like, wow. And so I really appreciate you saying that. And again, I appreciate you for protecting the people that because this is not about, bashing someone or
Not at
slander.
all.
Like we don't have time for that, right? This is about
We all have those kind of people in our past that have
yes,
had some sort of pain, and in order to have inflicted pain, they had to be close to us, right?
yes,
Bob
yes.
from Toledo, Ohio, I've never met him, never heard of him, I just picked it out of a random name.
Yeah,
That Bob can't hurt me. Somebody
right.
that's close to me is the only one that can. So we
Yeah,
all have this pain,
we do.
but in order to get through it,
Yeah,
and in order to forgive, I had to recognize what that emotion and pain was that I was
sure.
bringing forward.
And why it hurt you,
Yes,
right? And why you were holding on to it for so long and
exactly.
allowing it to have that power. So I really appreciate that. So let's talk a little bit more about being a male, right?
Mhm.
And those you were on one of our live shows and we kind of talked about this, right? Societal expectations and
Mhm.
how people look at you and they will just size you up
Yep,
and
we all
give you
do it.
yeah, we all do it.
We have to.
Yes. No, it really is just something that we do, right?
Yep.
And in doing that, we do make assumptions and we do kind of place things on people,
Mhm.
what they should do, what they shouldn't do, what they should say, how they should dress. How's that worked for you? How's that been, I guess, heavy for you in regards to being a male, but wanting to also show up in a way that sometimes society says
Mhm.
males should not?
Every day, I look at my closet, and it's always a struggle of um, what will cause the least number of those snap judgments.
Yeah,
Um,
that's heavy, man.
and so I'm very thankful to be able to ask my wife for fashion advice
Yeah.
because I will buy a lot bolder things than many males in the area do.
Hmm.
And so she helps me make sure because I don't understand what colors go together and what patterns don't. So there would be oftentimes I would walk out of my door where the stuff didn't go together. Individually, they looked great, but I didn't know how to put it together as an outfit. So
Yeah.
she's really helped me before I walk out the door, make sure that none of those glaring wrongs are there. So whether or not she would even wear the outfit doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We've gotten to the point where I can ask her not whether or not she would want to wear that outfit, but whether or not it goes together.
And what makes something wrong? What makes it not
So
go?
she just helps me with the theoretical. So do the colors go together? Do the
Yeah,
undertones work? And she teaches me. She takes the time. I'll bring 3 or 4 shirts and a pair of pants out and say, here's the one article of clothing that I want to wear this morning.
yeah,
Which one of these go with it? She goes, well, if you look at it, this undertone and this undertone don't go, or this pattern and this other pattern don't go, or yeah, you should wear brown with that, not black. Brown doesn't go with anything. It
I
does,
know.
but
No,
I don't
no.
know it.
But I
So
want
she
to
helps
ask you.
edit so that
Yeah,
the technicalities of it are
yeah,
correct, and it gives me the confidence to walk out the door knowing that I'm not technically making a major fashion faux pas.
yeah,
Um, and then it gives me the confidence to be then I don't, frankly, sorry for this wear, don't give a shite what
yeah.
anyone else ends up actually thinking about my outfit from there then, because I know it's not wrong.
Okay.
It's just what's worked for my brain.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, yeah. And I am such a putting things together wrong person, and I celebrate it, right? Because I always the question always even for myself is who determines that, right? Who gets to
Correct.
say what's right and wrong in regards to um, what your fashion sense
It's
is for
like I
that
found
day?
that I like wearing really large flat brimmed hats,
Yeah,
like 12-inch, 15-inch wide hats. That's very untypical of a heterosexual male in this area.
yeah,
Um, that's been really weird. That's actually was one fashion thing that I wore this last year that was really hard to do. Because I knew a bunch of people were looking at me differently because of it.
really,
And
wow,
I can see it
yeah,
because I snap sense a lot of people. I'm
yeah,
very emotionally in tune.
yeah,
So walking through a crowd of people, I will usually be able to observe almost every single person's reactions as I walk through a crowd.
yeah,
Um, so I think the biggest part of forgiving past and forgiving becoming my own new self now
yeah,
has been not trying to pick up others' emotions, even though I
yeah,
see it,
yeah, yeah,
and realizing that they have their struggles, I have mine, and unless they want to open up that for me to talk to them about, I don't need to pick up that burden. Otherwise, I
yeah,
would walk into a room and pick up the burdens of 100 people because I see all the sadness, I see all the tension in their life, and the strong empathy gene in me wants to help every single one of them
yeah.
because I'm nerdy enough to be able to find something that I can help them with.
Well, and
And
and a lot of times it's people who were denied empathy
yeah,
are usually the ones that like to give it to others, right?
yeah. So
So
reeling myself in and not giving all of myself to
and having
everyone,
boundaries, yeah,
having boundaries.
yeah,
Um, Boundaries are hard to set, but man, when you can work on them, they make life better.
yeah,
But you
yeah,
gotta be vulnerable with yourself
and honest, right?
and
Yes,
honest. And if
yes,
any of these conversations are hitting you at home and not understanding what we're talking about, that's a good indication that you need some help.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's okay, right? Like in any other area of life, we raise our hands and say we need help, right? If you're not good at plumbing and you got a water leak, what do? You call a plumber,
yeah,
right? But the moment we have a struggle in our mental health, as a guy, we are not allowed to have that. We'll go drink a beer with a buddy and bitch about it,
yeah, yeah.
which is fine. I'm not saying not to do that. I'm
No, I
just
get what
saying
you're
there's a
saying.
lot better avenues for it. So I got on a mental health app on my phone.
Mhm.
And so now, like, when a temptation, when a struggling thought comes through my head, instead of waiting, I just open the phone and put it in the journal.
Yeah,
Um, and that's really helped me get in control of my brain, get in
yeah,
control of myself, and forgive people and move on.
yeah, yeah. Do you think that having children helped motivate you to do better, so to speak?
Yes. My son Dean was 2 when I don't think I'll ever forget this event. He's a super bubbly kid, and I came home from work one day. I was exhausted. Just those days when you're irritating to your loved one,
Sure.
and like you just know like I got to be separate from people right now. So that was my lens when I walked in the door. Like I was a grumpy dead a-hole. And my
Hmm.
son runs up to me and goes, Daddy, Daddy, you're home. And he was playing with this little monster truck. And he looks at me, and he has a very expressive face. You know what's going through his head the
Yeah.
moment you see him. And he looks at me, and I can just watch that like flick, flick, flick of, oh, I can play with. Dad doesn't know how to play monster trucks with me. I've never seen him push this monster truck.
Mm.
Mommy, will you play monster trucks with me? And that was
Wow.
his interaction. And I realized then and there that what I was doing wasn't working because I
Yeah.
was coming home every day so emotionally unavailable
Yeah.
that my 2-year-old didn't think that I could push a car with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I have these kids now,
Mm-hmm.
and I am very obviously not giving them enough. We'll never be able to give all, right? But I'm not being enough for them, and I don't have any additional me left.
Yeah.
So therefore, I got to work on upgrading me
Mm-hmm.
because I'm empty. I don't have enough for myself to even do my job that I'm in, let alone for my wife, and let alone for my kids. So I gotta go to the upgrade shop and work on things. Or what's the point of making all the money and having all the things if
Yeah.
my own kid can't push a truck back and forth with me?
Yeah.
And that's what went through my head. I was like, well, F it all. If we gotta go, what's the options here? Make 6 figures and really not have a relationship that's with my child. If he doesn't think he can push a toy car with me, then I'm not being an available father for him.
Yeah.
And what's that going to translate to farther in life? If at 2 and 3 he can't be interactive with me like that, that's a permanent thing.
Well, the goal is always to have our kids not sit in front of a camera like this right now, right? And share how they were hurt, right, as children.
And
The
they're
whole,
gonna be.
huh? What'd you say?
They're gonna be. I'm not gonna be
Well,
perfect, but
well,
yes.
the thing is that my point is that when you know better, you have to do better,
Yes.
and we do owe them that. That when
Yep.
we learn things and along our journey as, adults, we want their life to be better than what we had.
Every generation learns something about how to interact with the new world better than the previous generation did.
Yeah.
And you're right. We owe it to our kids to recognize it ourselves.
Yeah.
And then to pass it down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's been very impactful to me to be able to upgrade myself, right? However terminology, right? If you like games, right, you're buying the download package and playing it.
Yeah.
It's made a big difference in my kids' life because now I come home and both boys come running over to me, give me big hugs, immediately want to play whatever game of chase. And my wife looks at me with that huge relief because she can go off the bathroom, lock the door, shut the door, be
Yeah.
away from the kids for 30 minutes after the whole day, and
Yeah.
have more energy all the way around.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in closing this, what would you suggest or leave with someone that may have, struggled with childhood trauma, and that can come
Mm-hmm.
from so many different things, and also, being on this journey of self realization,
Mm-hmm.
and as a male and as a father, a husband, I mean, all these things, right? What kind of advice would you leave with them?
Yeah. So everyone's brain's different. For me, when I look at trying to change anything, I see the whole picture, the whole elephant, and I
Yeah.
shut down. I don't make a change, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if I told you right now, hey, I want you to change something big about your life, that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
So if you're
Overwhelming.
in
Yeah.
the position right now listening to this and having not really made a lot of realizations about yourself, or um, you don't have a mental health counselor right now, um, look into that. That has been by far the number one change in my life. It's talking to my doctor about my health and working with somebody who just listens,
Yeah.
like works with, and just we talk through my challenges and I work on them. So I think the short answer is you only need to make the next right decision right. So
Mm-hmm.
don't pick up the future of, oh, I've got to be available to my kids. I'm at 0 hours a week now and I got to be 20 hours a week. No, just make the decision on one thing because you could actually stick to that. Um, so make decisions and improvements one item at a time.
Yeah.
And really, truly, I mean, I don't know what the future will look like, but at the moment, I think every adult should have a regular, consistent check in and conversation with somebody they can trust if it's not an actual licensed counselor, somebody else.
Yeah.
And work on yourself because if you're not working on yourself, you're stagnant or going backwards.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. I do. I mean, one word that just kept coming to me while you were talking was accountability, right?
Yes.
And we do it, and part of what we do at the Breaking Bread Village is talk about that, how we always point fingers at everyone, and they need to change, they need to be better, they need to do this, and you know very seldom do we say, what am I doing, or how can I better um, interact with that person to make this relationship better, right? We have choices in all of this, right? Even if we interact with the person at all.
Yep.
And so I appreciate you sharing that. What were you about to say?
One more thing just kind of
Sure.
popped up because I think many times I mentioned how I always thought it was my spouse,
Sure.
right? Like pick something, point all the figures that way, and have there been many things that she's changed and improved on? Of course, right? We're
Sure.
both in
Yeah.
this journey together, but
Yeah.
literally in my mind 6 years ago when we got married, most of the stuff was all her problem. It's been me that's done the changing, and me changing me has changed the dynamic of the two, right? Because where two are become one, so I change my half
Yeah.
of the one, and
Yeah.
it changes the other half naturally. So if you're in any type of relationship right now where you're having some struggle points, which should be basically any relationship,
Yeah.
I would encourage you to make the next right decision right. What can I do to work on me that will help this situation? Because one thing I can guarantee you is if your partner starts seeing you making an effort, a conscientious effort
Yeah.
to make improvements. I'm not saying you fixed your problem, but you are trying, they're going to reciprocate eventually.
Yeah.
So you do you, boo.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it will help
Yeah.
that relationship and connection. Start with you, because you can only control your controllables. You control you.
Yeah.
So you do you. You control you.
Yeah.
And watch the change.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Come break bread with me. Break bread